there. Welcome to Grandma's Table. Grab yourself a coffee and let's talk books. The first book I want to review with you today is Throw Another Pebble on the Pile, One Woman's Leadership Journey in the Church by Michelle Felice. Michelle not only is an amazing author, but she is someone I consider a friend. So is there a bit of a bias? Maybe. However, I'm going to be as truthful as I possibly can. Michelle's memoir is accessible to any and all. It is about her journey as someone on the margins in the evangelical Western church and how, when designed to be something but hindered from being that which you've been designed by Almighty God, when you're hindered from being that, hurt piles up. And Michelle's journey didn't start with filled with pain. It started feeling as though she was very welcome. And she bumped into some double standards within the church setting where she was ministering. And so when those bump ups came and those comments here and there came her way, they came hurtful, whether intentional or not. And she detached from them by considering them pebbles. And she brought this pebble came her way, and she would toss it on her metaphorical pile. And soon she realized that due to double standards, that pile was building up and building up and building up. And the pile was far bigger than anything imaginable. You see, it's easy to say, there's a boulder I need to climb over. There is a mountain in my way. But it's really hard to climb up a pile of pebbles without sliding down. It's hard to scale a mountain that's made of pebbles. And so the pain that Michelle experienced in her life, she decided to turn into good, because she is a woman who is sensitive to people on the margins, people that don't quite fit. And she's taken her story and developed it into this memoir that is so important. It's a crucial read for anyone in ministry, but even just in social justice in 2025. It's really important that we understand the double standards that are here. For instance, there are denominations in the Christian church that say absolutely no leadership whatsoever is to be given to a woman. This is not a debate about that theology. That is not what this debate is about. Do I think there's a time and a place for that debate? Yes, there is. But Michelle's book is not about proving her side of that. Her book is about the fact that she was involved in a denomination that said on paper that women could be in leadership. And every church had a decision to make about how far up in leadership their women could go. And her church was one that on paper it all looked good. And so she would apply for the job, and she would actually be used as a pastoral intern. So I keep saying that, interim pastor. So she was doing the work of lead pastor. But when it came time to actually be hired as lead pastor, the double standard reared its ugly head. And people who felt that they owned the church because they were there at its inception, they were the ones paying a lot of the bills, decided that they were not going to proceed beyond this double standard. They were going to get rid of Michelle, which was really, really tough. So, heartbreaking part of the book is when Michelle finally resigned from this church and decided that this is not worth, like, she would fight this situation another way. And when the congregation learned that she had resigned her post, two of the women out in the lobby actually gave each other a high five. They had put their theology as such importance that to have their theology win over a beautiful friend who had given her life, served this church for so many years, they put their theology over her. And when she stepped away so that they could have their theology, they were excited about that. That was a part of the book that really, really got to me, and that's when I cried. A part of the book that was beautiful, and my whole desire in my personal life is to have a good relationship with my young adults. You see, Michelle has two young adults, but when this all was going down with her story, they were watching how would mom and dad react to this. They were young people who knew their minds and who were taught that you can be whatever the Creator has made you to be, and He will equip you to be that. And the only thing that will get in your way is yourself. Well, they're watching something get in their mother's way. She had gone back to school. She resigned a job that paid bills really well. And she'd resigned that, and she'd gone to seminary, and she'd gotten the training. She became this interim pastor. She wanted the job. She was already doing the job. Why can't she have the title of senior pastor? Because according to the paperwork, don't forget, this is not a place for debate on this theology. Her church had claimed a theology that said women can be in leadership and they can be at every level. Well, now they're going back on that word, and it's not about her, because if it was about her, she wouldn't have been given the job as interim in the first place. If she couldn't do the job, they wouldn't have given her that job. There were women in other parts of leadership, in deacons and in elders and ministry leaders. Everything was great. She was even hired to be an associate pastor. So she was already a pastor at this church. It was the lead role that they were going back on, and they were showing their double standard. So this is about that pain during the understanding that this double standard was happening. And Michelle decided that she was going to use her story to create a book that would minister to anyone on the margins. You see, I know her heart because I've worked with her as a volunteer underneath her role as children's director at the church where she was ministering. I don't know for sure, but I probably know the people who gave each other a high five, which is really sad because the thing is, the people I knew from this church were marvelous, and I never ever would have thought it of them. So here's the thing, Michelle does not badmouth these people. She does not badmouth the church. She doesn't even name names. She says calling out the church is not her point. Wanting the church to be better at what they do, watching our posture towards one another, towards those on the margins, that is crucial. I think the part that I understood personally, chapter 15, if I were a man, I understand this part because that's how I felt. Because the things that were happening to Michelle would never have happened if she was Michael. Never, ever, ever would they have happened. Because it was the double standard between men and women. And I remember growing up being told, it's too bad you're a girl. You would have made a great pastor. And I was told in no uncertain terms because I went to a church where their theology was such that no women in leadership at all. None. Okay, so that was their theology. The whole point of this is that there is a double standard here. And this is a masterful book. This book is beautifully written, accessibly written, and it is hopeful in that there is space for change in the church and in the world in general. One of the other things Michelle points out in her book is that sometimes it's the world that is influenced by the church, and sometimes it's the church that's influenced by the world, because the world is actually doing better in their human rights HR behavior, and how we can put in a complaint to HR about how we're being treated at work, whereas in the church she couldn't do that because it was the people she would write a complaint to that were actually being the ones with the double standard. And it was really, really disheartening to see that in this story. Her memoir is memorable in that she uses images and stories to help you understand her perspective. It's also memorable because guess what? She doesn't try to preach at anyone. She's just telling her story. She doesn't try to cover too much ground. She says, this is what I know, so this is what I will write. And in the world of books, that's a good thing to do. Authors should write what they know. But it's also transferable. because it is transferable over to other marginalized groups, whether that's queer Christians, whether it is people of color being put down, whether it is the concept that DEI is being removed from places in leadership and places in political venue and religious venue, whatever it looks like, whether you are on the margins or just standing up for those who are, this book is for you. Whether you are in Christian circles or not, this book is for you. Whether you're in church leadership or not, this book is for you. It is a must read for anyone in a church circle in 2025. And if you happen to be in church leadership, regardless of what your theology is, this book is so helpful because it shows you that there's room for growth. And God has not stood still in all of these years. We say that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Absolutely, his character is the same. But he has not stood still. And he is growing us and teaching us. And we need to not stand still. We need to look at what is the main thing, keep tight to that, but make space. And no matter what we do, no matter what our theology, if we are throwing pebbles at people, we're hurting them, we're hindering them, and we're going to do damage. This is such a hopeful book. I pray that you will read it. You can get it all over the place, Amazon, Indigo, but Michelle is really worth listening to. She has a lot of wisdom and beautiful person inside and out, and I highly suggest you get to know her story, because her story is the story of so many people, not just women, anybody on the outside that feels a little bit like a square peg in a round hole, not pole, hole. But either way, grab yourself a cup of coffee and read a good book today. Thanks for joining me at Grandma's Table.